I am shonen trash. I've watched all the original Naruto twice. I worship the ground that My Hero Academia walks on, and I'm still current with Black Clover despite my distaste for it. So, surprising, I think, no one, one of my favorite shows that I've never gotten to do a video on is Seven Deadly Sins. Which, now that I look back on, it's kind of surprising because I absolutely adore this show. So today, I wanted to take a look at this show's characters and analyze how they make these incredibly overpowered characters work. So, a quick synopsis for people who are unfamiliar with the show. Seven Deadly Sins is your classic shonen anime, except the anime takes place after the major events that made the Seven Deadly Sins who they are. Basically, after the training arc and after the world's major conflict is more or less resolved, resulting in the disbanding and banishment of each of the characters. So the show picks up with the leader of the squad being sent on a quest by a girl he, clearly enjoys being around. That being to rebuild the Seven Deadly Sins and retake the Kingdom of Lioness, which has been taken over by the Holy Knights themselves. And of course, each of these characters are extremely overpowered. Having overpowered characters can often lead to boring conflicts without any stakes. So what does Seven Deadly Sins do to avoid this? As for solving the problem of stakes, it's usually put on a much more personal level for each of the characters. Most of them have regrets from decisions they've made in the past that ended up putting themselves into this situation to begin with. Thusly, they want to resolve them. Or maybe they've been in similar positions and don't want to make the same mistakes again. Meliodas is a fantastic example of this. In the first season, there is no other comparison to him. He is just the strongest person walking around. So why not just walk into the castle and single-handedly overthrow it? Well, because of his past. He lost the woman he loved because of a similar situation, and it haunts him. So now that he's found a girl who is similar to his past love and is even more defenseless than her, he knows he has to be cautious around her because raw power won't stop her from potentially getting killed. It's almost always what's at stake for him, but it gives the show stakes since we know him dying isn't the most realistic option. So what about keeping our interest? A character who is that overpowered usually doesn't make for an interesting fight. Look to One Punch Man. Although the show uses a ton of its own techniques to keep the fights fun, when Saitama arrives, calling this a fight is a bit of a stretch. So, Meliodas isn't alone in his strength. Some of the Magic Knights are pretty competent and can keep up. It's not just a curb stomp. On top of that is Meliodas' technique. He is far from Superman. His main technique, Full Counter, is what makes him as strong as he is. It's a neat little technique that allows him to turn back any attack on anyone at double the strength. And Meliodas is not alone in these creative techniques. Ban can't die and has some insane strength, but he also has a technique that allows him to steal the strength of others and use it against them. But perhaps my favorite example has to be Escanor. This is Season 2, spoilers by the way, well, sort of. The way they make Escanor just so much fun is that his strength comes attached with these strings. During the night, he is this weak, meager old man, but during the day, his strength is on another level, eclipsing even Meliodas. Well, before his little thing happens to him. This is all built upon by the villains of the anime. Most of them are actually weaker in strength than our protagonist, especially in Season 2 after the training arc. But what makes the fight so difficult is that where our protagonists have strings attached to their powers, the villains do not. Which makes for an interesting twist on the usual dynamic of how to beat the villains. It turns from exploiting their weaknesses to finding a way so they can't exploit our own weaknesses. They also keep the fights interesting by having this enormous sense of scale. Even some of the weaker characters in this anime seem to have some ludicrous powers, not to mention that they all have unique powers. Some of them are really simple, like lightning and wind, but others have some really creative techniques that make them really fun to watch. Seven Deadly Sins is a fantastic anime I recommend to every shonen lover. Its use of OP characters is really clever, and it's got a unique take on the classic fantasy storyline. But then again, I might be a little biased since, you know, I am shonen trash. So I've got a Discord up and running again, which is awesome. The only catch is that I am making it come with some of my Patreon tiers because there would be no way I could manage all of you. Last time we tried that, I was a 10th of the size and things got really bad really quick. Oh, and by the way, I made some major changes to my Patreon and would really appreciate it if you took a look at it and considered supporting the channel. You may be surprised by this, but YouTube does not pay a lot, and I am hoping to turn this into my job. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. If you enjoyed it, maybe consider subscribing. I actually almost forgot to mention this. I'm going to Anime Los Angeles January 10th through 13th. So if you're going to the convention and you want to meet up with me, or you just happen to see me walking around, feel free to come up and say hi. I always enjoy meeting you guys. A huge shout out to all of my patrons. You guys are my heroes. Speaking of which, if you're interested in seeing how I edit, joining our Discord, seeing my scripts early, or just supporting the channel, feel free to support me on Patreon. Make sure you guys share, like, comment, and subscribe. This is Man Matt. Make sure you guys say man and go watch that goddamned anime.